Hello and welcome back to HEMA Fight Breakdowns. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the spear and fighting against it in armor. So one thing that I had an opportunity to do over Labor Day weekend was get a lot of practice in my armor. And one thing that I wanted to try out specifically was I wanted to try and understand why it was that, especially in the German tradition of armored duels, you saw a lot of people and a lot of advice to simply throw away the spear. And I wanted to understand why that was, because on first impressions, you would think a spear would be great for fighting against a person in armor, especially if they didn't have an equivalently long weapon. Spears are long, they're stiff, they do a lot of damage, and they're still moderately precise. So why is it that then in sources like the Gladiatoria, you see so many people just, again, throwing it away? And I think the answer is a little bit clear when you try to practice with it. And the reason for that is that it is very, very difficult to get into a situation where the spear can stay at its optimal range and pick at the targets that it wants to pick at. As you can see in my armor particularly, my gaps are, around my armpits and the insides of my shoulders and my groin. And the problem with these locations is that they're very, very easy to defend with a sword. If you try to go low or high in any of the little armpit areas, it's pretty trivial for someone with a longsword, either in a more traditional, guard or in half sword, to just swat your point away and trudge forward. At which point it becomes fairly simple to let the spear miss and just keep walking forward in the hopes that you get past the tip. And once you're past it, it's very, very easy to just grab the haft anywhere you can, turn it into a pretty much useless weapon, and then make it so that you can do whatever you want to do afterwards. And the other thing worth pointing out here is that my opponent, JJ here, actually has a dagger on him. And we wanted to put that in there specifically because we wanted to give my opponent an option when I got past the spear point, as that had happened, 4, 5, 6 times in a row now. The problem is that it was very, very difficult to grab the dagger and do anything meaningful from that position because, well, obviously, every single time I got past the point and I grabbed the haft, you would have to abandon the spear, drop both of your hands, and go for your dagger, at which point I would still have all of my hands and my longsword available, and I could do pretty much whatever I wanted at that point, regardless of whether or not my opponent in this case is unarmored or armored in another theoretical scenario. So, after testing this for a while, I started to realize that the spear wasn't exactly the greatest option for fighting a person in armor, but I also started to realize that when fighting against a spear, you really want to take those traditional longsword guards in order to get your best advantage. Obviously, if you're looking to defeat someone with a spear, the number one thing you have to do is parry those thrusts, and it's very simple for a person with a spear to thrust and then pull back quickly. So being in half sword, despite what many people would probably think, was not a great option because, one, it exposed the left hand of being further up on the sword to just getting stabbed at, and more importantly, it shortened the length of the blade that I could extend in front of myself. And I found that a long point style guard worked best because it was easy to simply crump the spear into a position where it was useless, hold it there in a bind, and then just walk past the point. All I had to do was wait for my opponent to throw a committed enough stab, push it out of the way, and just walk past. So that was basically what I concluded when I was doing these little tests. Obviously, they're not completely conclusive, but it gave me a better understanding of why it is we see in these sources the spear just not being prioritized where a poleaxe or a longsword or especially a dagger might be more useful.
All right, last one.
All right, that's going to be it for today. If you'd like to see your own footage featured on the channel, feel free to send an email over at HEMAFightBreakdowns@gmail.com, and hope to see you next time.